Welcome to today's video. I'm here because I really want to have this discussion that I keep hearing, and that discussion is, are markets, like vendor markets, right for me? I have a lot of thoughts on the topic. Let's just go ahead and dive in. I really wanted to come on and share my thoughts with you because this is something that I see super consistently. Should I be doing a market? I just started. I don't have customers. I, don't have a lot of money to spend on like actually furnishing or establishing all of these foundational things that you need to be a part of a market. Generally, I have a script for these types of videos, but I don't actually have one for today. So you'll just have to bear with me, of course. But here's what I think the bottom line is. If you want to do vendor markets and it fits into your life, I think that you should. And if it doesn't fit into your life, but you still want to do vendor markets, then I think that you need to take a look at the things you are already committed to see if you can find the time and space necessary for the markets. And I don't just mean the markets themselves. I mean all of the things that go into preparing for the market, after the market, all of those things, right? It's not just you're not just there for the time that the market is open to close. You're there before, you're there after. You have to clean up. You've got inventory. You've got all of these other pieces that go into the vendor market puzzle. And that's kind of what I want to share. When I started my business, I was not interested in doing vendor markets at all. It was not something that I wanted. It was not something that I planned for. And then one day, about a year into it, one day, my daughter helps me a lot. And we were just kind of chatting and she was like, oh, a lot of people aren't buying our stuff. Like, why aren't our friends buying it? And why aren't we seeing people that buy it like at a regular store? And we kind of went through and I explained to her it's more of like an online business. People are buying, but it's just, it's online. And we kind of went through that. And she was like, well, that's cool, but like, don't you want to share it with the people that we see in real life? And so anyway, I kind of thought on that for a bit because I still wasn't convinced, right? Then one day I was just kind of looking at events on Facebook and I saw that a boudoir studio was having an open house. And I thought, oh, that would be super cool. Maybe I should reach out, not as like a vendor per se, but maybe I should reach out, see if she's doing gift bags. Like maybe I could add something to a gift bag that she was doing. And she was like, hey, we chatted for a while. We still talk. And I see her at quite a few events that I do. She was like, that's awesome. How about you come and set up a table? And I was like, oh, sure. Yeah. Like, I thought about it. I'm like, yeah, sure. I can set up a table. It's one table. We have one folding table. So I didn't have to buy anything. I wasn't interested in doing like it wasn't like a tent type of situation. The actual town that I live in, there is a kind of like a main street, I guess you could equate it to. And all of the businesses are inside of historical houses that have been there for hundreds of years. So it's not like a typical like shopping center setup. So obviously a tent was out of the question for that. And I thought, I have the table, I have things that I can take. Like, why don't we just go and do it? So, and by we, I mean me. Obviously, I didn't take my daughter. She's 9. I did not take her to the boudoir studio with me. So I did the event. And I made $600. And I just remember, I think it was right under 600. And I just remember it was 3 hours long and I made $600. And I was like, dang, this is so awesome. Like I was super happy. I was kind of in that place where I was getting some online orders, but not a ton. I did not have any retail locations at that time, or I wasn't in any retail locations at that time. Everything was just kind of like, eh. And I was so happy to be able to move those products and make that amount of money. And I think that's kind of when I realized I was missing out on like a great opportunity, being vendor markets. So, but from there, I kind of slowly added a couple on. That was in the spring. So, in the spring, vendor markets are ramping up for, you know, that fresh air feel, and then they kind of slow down for the summer, and then they really ramp up for fall and winter. So I signed up for a couple. I didn't do a ton, but I did a couple. Every time I went, I was making like $500. And that was awesome. And I think, you know, you may hear 500 and be like, yeah, but that's not really a lot. I guess it depends on your outlook. But for me, the consistent extra $500 was a lot, and still is. And so I kind of looked at it from that perspective of, I think monetarily it is worth it, though obviously it can fluctuate. I have made $15 at one single event. It was like a 6-hour long event. I made one sale and it was $15. So I'd be open and aware that that could possibly be the case for you. So maybe my story will help you. Maybe you're not sure and you just want to try something out. Maybe look for a less intense or aggressive event. Like sometime, you know, I do feel like sometimes you go to a vendor market and you're like, oh my, like these people have flags and they have signs and they have this and they have spin the prize wheel and they have, you know, do this and that and this and that. And it's really great. But what you have to remember is when you're at the beginning, you're not going to have all of those things, right? Because you don't, one, know what you need, and two, have the funds to support that, especially if you're not sure whether you want to do the events or not. If it's something that you're considering taking seriously, then again, I would go to one of those lesser type events to get the feel for it and see if it's something that you want to invest in. Ultimately, you're the only person that's going to be able to make that decision. So I think that you should go both as a customer and as a vendor to kind of feel things out and see how they go. And I think the other really big piece that I wanted to make sure that I touched on was considering how it might affect your household. For us, you know, we have 3 kids. The oldest is 9. So we are in prime toddler time. Everybody's playing a sport. School's happening. This is happening. We have jobs. We've got everything happening on the weekend. We're in CCD for First Communion for our older 2 kids. So you really... you know, doing markets and things like that is awesome, but it was a huge factor to me to make sure that I figure things out in a way that doesn't remove me from the household. And I hope that that made sense and sounded the way that I meant it to sound, because I think it can be easy to get carried away and think, oh, well, it's just a couple hours on a Saturday. Oh, it's a couple hours on a Sunday. And then the next thing you know, if you're not paying close attention, you're gone every weekend. So, and that might be what you want, but for me, that doesn't work. I think the best thing that you can possibly do is to figure out, one, if you want to do the events, and if you do figure out that it is something you want to pursue, that two, you figure out a way that you can do it without, removing yourself. For me, it's super important that I'm there for as many of my kids' games as possible. And I don't want doing markets or making that quick $500 to affect that, right? If I miss one occasionally, then that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. And if I'm relying on this as sole income, then that's also something or conversation that you have to have with the other people in your household. But for me, while I do take my business extremely seriously, it is not my main source of income. So if I'm like, yeah, next weekend I'm going to do this festival, but the following weekend, no, we've got like 100 soccer games going on, then that's fine. And there's nothing wrong with that. So jumping back to the beginning of the video, what I think about doing vendor markets is, if you want to do it, I think that you should. And if you want to do it, but you're worried about your time constraints, consider what your priorities are and where you can find the time to do it. I see a lot of people take their kids with them. Sophia, my daughter, my oldest, that helps me, she went with me. And you could see in this vlog here, she was an excellent helper. I do see a lot of people bring their kids to the events too. That's also an option, something to think about. You just got to consider where your family is at and the time and money that you want to invest into doing the markets. Hopefully I'm not just talking in circles. I do much better with like an outline of things that I want to say, but I just happen to have this time. And the topic was fresh on the brain, so I wanted to come and film it. But I hope it's like, I hope it's going to be a good video. If you have decided that vendor markets are for you and you have figured everything out that you need, I do have like a couple of other videos on my channel about it, which I will put up on the screen at the end of the video. What I want to leave off with is these considerations, I guess is how you would phrase it. Consideration number 1, what was the event like in past years? I think a lot of us can agree we don't necessarily have the time to go to every single event. And so because of that, we need to be able to read advertisements, flyers, check the history out of the event to see which ones will be most profitable or most worth us attending. And again, especially if you are on like time constraints. And I've been thinking about this one for a while, so hopefully you enjoyed. If you have any advice for others that might be considering this very same thing, please leave it down in the comment section below. You guys know I love the community that comes through down there. Okay, I'll see you in my next one. Bye.